to know more about us, and if you are interested to join us, you may access the link in your screen, bit.ly/communitywg. Yeah, some reminders and house rules. So this webinar will be live streamed via YouTube and will be recorded. So right now, Geoffrey will start the recording and also the live streaming in YouTube. Also, please abide by the hot code of conduct. This is just to make sure that we're all welcoming and respectful here while we conduct this webinar. We want this to be an open and inclusive space for dialogue on the topic. So yeah, just a quick overview of the program structure. So we will have a 1-hour panel discussion where most of our panelists will be able to discuss or answer the questions, and also participants or attendees can ask questions via chat. So we will also keep note on your questions, and also after the 1-hour panel, we will have 30 minutes breakout room so we can have a little bit of networking and also follow-ups on questions not being able to answer during the panel discussion. So in the breakout room, and everyone can talk via voice. So yeah, in the panel discussion, only panelists and speakers will be able to talk. So yeah, if anything that comes in mind, comments or questions, please do so via chat. And if you're on social media, please post and use the hashtags ValidationMay or data quality. So yeah, very excited to start the panel discussion. So yeah, let's kick start it. We have a very amazing lineup of speakers, data users, and also private and organization data users for data in OpenStreetMap. So we will. May I ask Jorge Aguilar from CAART to please introduce your name, also a brief background about your work, and maybe give us one tool that you recommend or use for validation or to monitor data quality edits in Open Mapping or OpenStreetMap.
Yes, my name is Jorge Aguirre. I was born and live in Guatemala, Central America. It's a very small country, like 109 square kilometers, about the 6th size of Texas. But we have a few nice things around Guatemala, like being such a small country, our official language is Spanish. But we also have 24 different languages, of which 22 come from the Mayans, which this was like the Mayan kingdom way back when. And we also have currently we have 3 volcanoes active. And, you know, other risky factors like this is a really big earthquake zone. We had a big earthquake back in 1976. We're like 23,000 people killed. And obviously that made a big impact in lots of things in Guatemala. About the validations and everything, I do recommend using the Validator tool, which can also be made to scale to suit your needs. There's also a method of doing that. So please always use the Validator tool. It always helps point out different items that could be incorrect throughout your edits. Sometimes it's something very simple, like a dash or a period or something being out of place. Or sometimes, I mean, even capitalizations or many other items that really make a difference when you're trying to get good quality data. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. And next, Ralph, Eaton.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for turning up. My name's Ralph Eaton. I've been a cartographer all my life, and that sort of led me towards validation as a nature, because I am very interested in the standard of mapping and understand the standard of mapping. So I stepped up to help lead validators at a global level, and I am also a tutor for missing maps. I really use across the board tools for validation and mapping. So to name a single one is going to be really awkward for me. What I would like to say is the title of this is Data Quality in Humanitarian Mapping. Please remember there are all sorts of maps around OpenStreetMap. There's the OpenCycle there's the OpenSki map, there's the OpenSnow map, there's the OpenSea map. All of those are specialist maps. Each one of those is a specialist in their own field. So the quality of what they specialize in is important to them. Our focus here is on disasters and humanitarian. So for HOT, we focus on disasters. For missing maps, it's humanitarian interventions. And each disaster or humanitarian intervention has its own limitations or requirements in the field. We need to focus our quality on those requirements, but still be able to conform to all the OpenStreetMap norms and standards. So those are the two factors that we would look at for quality. That is how I present things, and hopefully this is how I will be answering your questions. I pass it back to Arnali. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ralph. And next is Laura. So yeah, give us a brief introduction about you and also a tool or a method that you use to monitor data quality.
Hi, I'm Laura or Laura Avelino, and I originally from Brazil and have grown up in Canada. Grew up in Vancouver in the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, and currently reside in Ottawa in the unceded traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. So in terms of my role here in data quality, so I'm joining you as a Canadian Red Cross staff person working in information management and data. And primarily, I'm not a mapper. So I actually work with data for emergency response decision-making. And in particular, when it comes to the usage of OSM, we have a program. How we utilize missing maps is in working with rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Canada. So in looking at data quality and how to validate it, I actually won't give you a tool, but I will say instead that the key for us is always going to be the field perspective or the community perspective, especially because we do work with remote and Indigenous communities. We know that what may be on the map may not actually be what they, how they look at the land and how they look at the names. And so always going back to that perspective is key for us in considering what quality data means and what representative data means as well.
Thank you, Laura, for that amazing intro. And yeah, not but not the least, Martijn van Exel.
Yeah, hi everyone. Honored to be invited on this fantastic panel. Some really good introductions. I see quite a few familiar names in the list of participants, so that's also really nice. I'm Martijn. I'm from the Netherlands originally. I live in Salt Lake City in the United States for the past 10 years. I call myself sometimes an OpenStreetMap senior citizen because I've been involved in this project for quite a long time, well over 10 years now, almost 15 years. I think like the points that both Ralph and Laura made in different ways is like quality for me is really about kind of people see the map in different ways and get something out of it that interests them. So quality is really not one thing; it's many things. It's different things for people who ski, different things for indigenous people, and people who are interested in all these different layers that OSM is, right? And I think that's fantastic. And I fully subscribe to that as well. I think it's you need to go back to those communities to figure out what quality means for them. As for tools, I think I can toot my own horn, and I've created a few tools, but I don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to paste the link actually here in the chat. I'd like to use a tool that's called Who Did It. It's not very well known, I think. That's why I found it interesting. But basically gives you a map, of course, and it shows you what various mappers have done recently in any area that you're interested in. So you can click on any of those cells and say, okay, what has been happening here? Who's been making changes? And you can look at those changes to various lenses. So I use it myself to kind of figure out what people have been doing in the areas that I care about, and also to welcome new users to the map if there's people who are mapping for the first time. So I look at this almost every day just to kind of see what's going on in my area. So yeah, pass it back to Annelie. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Martijn. That's a new tool to me as well. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, thank you for sharing your brief intro and also some tools and methods that you use. So yeah, we can kick off. You've mentioned also the community perspective on data quality is very important. So I want to know or ask the panelists, so how do you ensure that the right people, the right volunteers have the right skills and knowledge to participate in your project, especially, not just mapping, but also making sure that it's a high, or yeah, it's the quality of the data is good. So yeah, it can be, how does one, I think I will ask Ralph first. So yeah, what do you do to ensure that people have right skills, and yeah, how does one become a validator since you are leading a global validation team?
All right. Well, my best way of telling people about validation is that if you start off mapping and you're still busy learning, you are a beginner. And as you slowly progress, you start to see that some others haven't drawn things quite correctly. That shows that you're starting to gain a bit of experience in your mapping. As you go along, you start to correct some of the things that the other people have done because you know it's wrong and you want to get it right before you mark a task as complete. Eventually, you'll find that you're doing this more and more often. And when you reach that stage, you are becoming experienced and you are ready to start validating, because you are or have already got an eye for spotting some of the errors and mistakes. At this point, I would suggest that they move on to take some validator training and contact us to join the hot validation teams. So onboarding is a process of what kind of experience have they had, what skills have they got, how good is their mapping. We look at all of these things, plus of course we look at, have they had some formal training in validation? If they don't, they go into the trainee validators. If they have, and they have a really good across the board experience in mapping buildings, waterways, roads, and places of interest and land use, they are very likely to start heading to the global validator team. So that's our process for taking on board validators. We encourage everybody to keep improving their mapping, and anyone who applies that doesn't quite make the standard, we don't say sorry, goodbye. We don't. We would like to encourage them to keep moving on and keep improving and apply again shortly afterwards to come back again. So we do encourage people, and we'd like you to become validators.
Yes,
Thank you,
you.
Anali.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph, for that wonderful intro on how does one become a validator. So I'd like to ask Martijn, since you're also, I know, a validator and you monitor data that comes in and out in OpenStreetMap, especially in your area. So yeah, what skills have you developed to become a validator, and how much time did you commit, or do you to practice on being a good validator?
Yeah, it's a great question, Annalie. Thanks. The one of the things I love most about OpenStreetMap is that sort of it's open to so you don't need a ton of training ahead of time. Anyone can contribute. That's basically how it how the basic premise of the map, right? And what that means is that like Ralph also said, that you can't get it right the first time, and people don't really expect you to. And I think it's really important to and one of my favorite things to do is to see like who's new in the areas that I care about, and kind of giving some comments on their first edits. And I think that the power of the local communities comes into play here, where you really kind of go work together as a community to welcome new users and to guide them into and figure out what their interests are and point them to the right tools and point them to the right people maybe. And I think there's some awesome tools that are also discussed in the and being developed in the local chapters and local communities working group of the OpenStreetMap Foundation, where basically tools that let you see who's new, not just the tool that I showed, but tools that give you an opportunity to send messages to new mappers and to welcome them. I think that's really a key component of OSM. Like you don't need a whole lot of training ahead of time, and that's wonderful because you can express your values to the map right away. But then there's people around you who can help you along. And yeah, that's basically the one thing I probably love to do most in OSM.
Yeah, thank you, Martijn. So I'm also interested in the data users perspective. So how do you? This is a question for Laura or Jorge. So for Laura, she mentioned like they're more on the field mapping validation. So how do you manage your validators or your field mappers, and how do you practically retain or maintain their interest also in validation, because that there might be poor quality data and they might be demotivated on that. So yeah, how do you maintain that or manage their expectations and also interest?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, I mean, there are several sides to that answer. I think the first thing to acknowledge is the purpose in a lot of our OSM activities is, and I speak for Canadian Red Cross and looking at our Missing Maps program, but I think at the heart of it is to create a good base map for local input. And so when it comes to looking at data quality and the creation of data as well as the validation, we want to make sure that it's a jumping off point for the local mappers. So we do work in OSM through our volunteers and through company partners who will engage in mapathons, etc. But the thing that we emphasize at all times is that it's only really as good as the data is quality. And so what we've started to do is engage with our volunteers and with the community to promote more of the validation activities instead of just the pure creation, so just tracing. But at the end of the day, outside of that aspect, which I'll let some of the colleagues on the panel here speak a little bit more to, when it comes to community input and keeping that engagement up, we actually leverage our community programs. And so while we will serve as the technical input, we always go into a community discussion through our Indigenous programs, through our operations teams, or through our disaster risk reduction partners who are working directly with communities to identify what the interests are, what will help them, what that community identifies as helping them increase resilience or increase their knowledge of their own local context. So what's missing on the map, effectively, is the question that we're asking there. And some of the things here, I mean, first, to create that interest, it takes time. You need to build a relationship with that local community. You're not going to drop in, build that relationship, sell the program and get out. It takes months. It can take even longer than that, depending on the community. And so working through local partners is first thing. And then really data quality is something to be maintained. So you're not going to be the person that's at the field the whole time. You're there to support the process. You're there to help them understand how to engage with the map, how to create data quality. And so we need to leave behind capacity and interest and resources and tie them into the community in order to maintain relevance. But we recognize that that's not us doing it, it's the community. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now and hand it back to you, Arnalee.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Yeah, so yeah, just like Ralph and Martijn has shared earlier, that it takes time being a remote validator, and also Laura shared that it also takes time being a field validator or a field maintainer of the data. Jorge, do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe on remote side, or if you have experience in field mapping or field validating as well?
Okay, yes. I work for a company called CART, which has been known on the flyer. And CART has several customers we work for. We focus mostly nowadays on getting there. When I say getting there, it's not just drawing in roads, but actually seeing what kind of road it is. Does it have any kind of asphalt? Is it a dirt road? How many lanes? Are there restrictions, turn restrictions, conditional turn restrictions? And all these things, like one-ways and the sort, all these things help us reach a point. To do this, we do lots of field work. We actually travel to major cities and take footage for Mapillary. We put it up onto Mapillary and then work from there in the office, gathering all the data we find useful. And we have different processes for quality inside the house, let's say. We have, I think it's 2 different levels of quality control. We do 2 different levels first, and then we do a final quality control. And we're always searching for consistency and quality of entering data. And also, my company has focused a little more recently on working with the local communities. We have several people, some of which are here today with us, that are from elsewhere and work with the company from within the local community, and they work with the local community. So it's kind of an effort to acquire local knowledge remotely, which sounds somewhat strange, but we found it's been a pretty good tool to keep things up to date, which is also important.
Thank you, Jorge, for that. And yeah, as Jorge mentioned, there's like 2 levels of data quality workflows that they do in CART. Ralph or Martijn, do you have any opinions, or would you like to share your workflow as a validator, or any best practices and guidelines for validating projects or tasks?
Yes, I would. As you heard earlier, we encourage validators, but we train our validators to be polite and kind and helpful, and to try and help people to progress. As validation goes, one of the most important tools that I use is, of course, the validator on JOSM, and we try to encourage people, all mappers, to move over to JOSM. if they want to do validation. Having said this, our ID editor has already built in a number of OSM editor checkers that like OSM Inspector at Keep Right. Those are built into ID now to help people to get it right and to check over the work. As one of the things that we do is a third pass to check the overall work to make sure things like roads are consistent throughout, which you can't do tile by tile. But to give you some idea of the tools, there's Osmos, there's Keep Right, there's OSM Inspector, there's Map Campaigner, the JOSM has got its own validator, ID Editor has got some. There are a few others like Map Paint. All of these are tools that are used to help and keep the quality of the map important. However, what I would like to impress is the quality of the map should be focused. And that focus should be on what are the instructions for the project you are working on. Each project has its own standard and its own requirements, and the people in the field need those specific items on the map. And that's what we should be focusing on, rather than listening to OSMers who are experts in road or experts in railways who are complaining that our buildings aren't squared. They are not concentrating. A disaster happens immediately, and within the first few days, it's absolutely critical to save lives. I am actually going to propose and push that in actual fact, for a disaster, the first mapping should be done by intermediate and advanced mappers, so that we keep the quality that gets to the field immediately and is far better. The missing maps and pre-projects preparing for humanitarian interventions, we can spend a bit more time. With the result is that we can train people to do that. But as you can understand, with a disaster, those people in the field need the information immediately to do their job effectively and efficiently. The first 7 days are critical. So quality is very important, immediate, but quality is not always important in us being sidelined because we're worrying about how other people see our mapping that we're doing for the people in the field. Our mapping is basic mapping to help them navigate, look for the people that they need to help, to know what equipment they need to take with them, to know where to go and how many team members they need to take with them. All of that logistics they get from our mapping. So quality is important in that sense. Thank you,
Yes.
Anali.
Thank you, Ralph. That's a lot of good points, and also good points and pressing points that you've mentioned. But yeah, before I comment on that, maybe Martijn, do you have any comments or opinions on the previous question on, you know, how your workflows as a validator or best practices in mapping to ensure data quality in your project?
Sure. I think that Laura had a comment on Ralph's.
I did. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to make notes instead, but I'm. If you're okay, I'll hop in. I just wanted to. I fully agree with Ralph and emphasize as well that it's sometimes these are features that through partnerships, and again, emphasizing that local perspective, you can identify in ahead of time. So programs that we've done in working with local first responders, we recognize that, I mean, in our context, we focus on domestic mapping. Canada is a very large country, and it's largely undermapped. So Canada is a country where our population is focused along the 49th parallel, but as soon as you go any further north, which is 90% of the landmass, I will unscientifically state, it's very poorly mapped. And so first responders in those areas they may have local sources for information, but you never know until you ask what the gaps are. And so a quality map there is one that they can use in the format that they can use. And so some have identified that the lack of street names in communities, which may not exist. There may not be any street names. That's the biggest gap. It's the lack of local firefighters may say that we actually don't know where all the rivers are, and we have to go to the river to get water, depending on what community we're in. And so, yes, the 7 first days of emergency are critical, but if you have a relationship with a local community and you are a longstanding program that can work with preparedness, some of those consultations can go in advance, and it's really, really critical work, and it's something that OSM can be such a huge asset for in these undermapped communities. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I didn't notice that you wanted to speak, but yeah, that's a very great point as well. You know, remote mappers or remote mapping, they can give us the base map for the map that we wanted to use during disaster or humanitarian response, but the gaps and what data is really needed on the ground, that is one thing that only the community know. We did not know it is just by looking at the imagery. So yeah, thank you for that. And back to you, Martijn, if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm really, the notion of sort of incremental quality really resonates with me, right? So you, the first, Ralph mentioned the first 7 days, it doesn't, you don't really care about square buildings or those kinds of things. You just need the information that is needed at the moment, and then someone else will come along and make further improvements. And that's it reminds me of a sort of tiny little story that that I want to share. Like the first mapping party I went to, I lived in Amsterdam at the time. And we walked around with GPSs, and there was no aerial imagery at the time. So all we had are our little GPS traces, and the map was pretty much empty. And I was firing up the software. It was a very early version of JOSM right at the time. And I was about to draw my first road, and I was like, uh-oh, what if I do it wrong? And I always remember the person who was looking over my shoulder. He told me, just do it. Someone else will come along and make further improvements. And that's, I always remember that. And that's still something that I carry with me every day when I guide new people into OSM and also my own mapping, right? You don't have to be 100% certain. It just needs the best information at the time that you have it. A little bit on the process analysis, I think I built a tool called MapRoulette. Some of you may know it. It's a micro-tasking tool that anyone can create tasks for other people to help solve. And it also has built-in sort of review capabilities, right? So any task that people solve can then be forwarded to a different team that then goes or different group of people that then goes and reviews the work. And that's heavily inspired by what the tasking manager also does. So we always encourage people to write really good instructions for what you want people to do, but then also use that review capability to make sure that other people may have a different perspective or more experience to go in and check the work. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Martijn. MapRoulette is widely used in the Philippines, so we're a big fan of that. And yeah, you've also mentioned in your small or brief story that me as a new mapper as well, I was very kind of anxious when making my first edit, because you'll never know. And I saw that there's a tick on OSM ID that do you want someone to review your edit, and of course that kind of make me feel afraid. Oh no, someone will see this. And yeah, of course, but we know that there are lots of less great mapping in OSM. There are vandalism in OSM, and I want to touch on Ralph's point earlier about the project instructions or project guidelines on how to map. So if you have any experience, like if we know there's a global tagging convention or how to map in OSM, but then it kind of depends on local context, because some countries they have a way of saying, oh, this is a main road, and some countries also have like a primary, secondary, tertiary, and everything, and sometimes the tags overlap with each other. So yeah, I think my question would be, how would you ensure or balance those two, the global way of mapping and also the more of a local community context of mapping. I think maybe you can start with Laura or Jorge for, yeah, since they have experience in field mapping. Jorge, yeah.
Yes,
I forget. Yeah.
trust me, we've encountered multiple challenges in as far as the local community, how they see a road and how they express it on the map. For instance, I remember a country, they kind of said, okay, so we have no trunk roads. And we went ahead and encouraged them to rethink their description of a trunk road, because a trunk road is a very important road within a community road network. And it took several months of convincing the locals of why they should have trunk roads also, as well as the other categories. But that has been a challenge, and sometimes a very tiresome one. But I think in the end, everybody has their own perspective. If you focus on the pictures seen in the English descriptions of, like a German Autobahn, and say, hey, I have nothing like this in my country. Well, guess what? You do, but you have your own version of it. And sometimes it's not very easy to detect, but it's something that can be done, and we encourage everybody to hop on board with it.
Thank you, Jorge. Laura, do you have any comments or opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Jorge, we face this kind of thing all the time, both within OSM and in general. I mean, when it comes to using maps and using data in humanitarian assistance, geographic hierarchies change from region to region at all times. And that can make targeting and understanding, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of what we use mapping for in humanitarian assistance is trying to understand both the impact, like where is the emergency, but also who is impacted. And so I don't have a good answer for that, because I think we all struggle with this issue. But at the end of the day, the question that we always ask ourselves is, who is the map for? And so again, I think my word of the day will be localization at the end of the day. To share a little bit of I guess a scenario, we have a community in British Columbia where when we were originally mapping, we found that there are a lot of different names. And in fact, this is a case throughout Canada. Many Indigenous communities, their names on the maps are their colonial names. It's the English name. It's not what the community refers to themselves as. Now, already, I think we can generally agree that in terms of inclusivity and in making a map that's true to the community, that can be a problem. But also when we're delivering humanitarian assistance, we will often take registrations from peoples who are affected. And the way that the map has always been shown to them affects how they register, which impacts how we're able to even find them. So when maps are not inclusive, they may, in this case, now the Indigenous community that I'm thinking of right now, I won't be able to pronounce it very well, so I'll apologize already on that. But their Indigenous name, Asquith Knook, has been, they had the nearest largest town, which is how people normally register themselves, which is not at all close to where they are, but all of the maps refer to it as Columbia Lake Indian Band or Columbian Lake 3. Which is not what any of them call themselves. And so when it came to trying to find them and saying, okay, this is where you are, this is where it was impacted, our maps are wrong, or rather our data is wrong. And so again, it's that question of who is the map for and how can we include what will mean, I mean, also acknowledging that if we're ever trying to roll things up, let's say according to government standards, well, that's a separate problem once again. So how can we include all of the relevant information without making it overwhelming? Again, not a great answer, but I think those are the key questions for us, is who is the user and who is it for? So how can you answer both of those questions and keep your data quality consistent to actually serve you and serve them to do so?
Yeah, great point, Laura. I think I will always have bias on that, since I'm one of the community members who are also highly affected by these hazards and disaster. Philippines is a very disaster prone community, and yeah, I think localization as well is very important. But yeah, excited to know what our more of our remote mappers think about the, how to strike balance, and what should we prioritize. Is it the local community tagging, or more of the global? And yeah, Ralph, you want to answer that first?
Yes, I like where that is coming from. The Missing Maps project very early on started rolling out to local communities and training local communities to collect information and get it onto the map. But let me start off with the question of roads. I agree with all of you. The roads are different things to different people in different countries. And for that reason, OpenStreetMap had to take a look at how could they give a single global interpretation that everyone could use. And that is how they came up with the idea that the road is not the road that is designated by the country. It is not the road that is designated by the kind of surface on it or how good the road is. It is purely designated by its importance. Does it connect to major cities? In other words, it's a major road. Does it connect to large towns? In other words, it's a secondary road. Does it connect to villages? It becomes a tertiary road. Does it connect local communities? It becomes an unclassified road. So the hierarchy there is not about the quality of the road. It's not about whether it's maintained by a provincial or a private company. It's not about any of that. It's about how important the road is. So each country can have its trunk roads and its tertiary roads, its unclassified roads. We ran into this problem when we mapped for the double earthquake in Nepal, where the mountainous villages of Nepal did not have roads, they only had paths. There were no roads up in that part of the country. So of course, we had to invent our instructions for mapping there because there were no roads to map. So yes, we try to take into account everything. Now, as Hot and Missing Maps, our remote volunteer crowdsourcing mappers are mapping just the basics. What they can see from the satellite imagery is the buildings, the roads, residential areas, railway lines and waterways. They cannot see names. They cannot see what's underneath a roof. So they cannot say there's a shop or a house or just an open kitchen. So as far as that goes, we map just the basics. We give them the basic infrastructure, and then we encourage and try to push for local people to add color to that, to add the names of the local things. One of the things we did was use the motorbike mappers in Sierra Leone. And what they did was they got on their motorbikes and they went from village to village and they spoke to the local people and they got the old name of it, what the people called it, what it's named now. Was there another village further down the road of the same name that was destroyed and it was rebuilt? So all of that information came from the local people themselves. And we populated Sierra Leone with the names of the villages that the people on the ground actually recognized, and not just from old government maps and old colonial ideas. We went to the local people for that. And I strongly encourage that the local people are the ones that will be adding the color to the map, not the remote mappers. Thank you, Arnali.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. That's a very important point as well. I think we all can agree that, having a base map like the roads, especially the roads, because, it connects village to village or community to community. So yeah, it's a very good point. Martijn, do you have any comments or want to share your opinions on that?
Yeah, I'm really latching on to what Laura said earlier about like who is the map for, right? I've worked for various companies that make maps that are not OSM, that are traditional sort of commercial maps. And when they get curious about OSM, it's like, what is this thing that everybody makes and everybody contributes to? Is what they look at it from a perspective of a definition of the map that is sometimes 4,000 pages, right? So they're like, why doesn't anybody tell them what to do, right? Why is there all these different definitions of roads, like Jorge and Ralph both alluded to as well? Why is there not one standard, and why is it like this? Why is it such a mess? And that's typical of the way that traditional map dinosaurs look at OpenStreetMap, because they can't get into this mindset of that the map is for everyone, right? And that everybody gets something different out of it. They have a very specific view of what a map should be, and there's not this open mindset of like everybody can contribute and everybody can add their layering of knowledge and experience to it. And that's the one thing that OSM sort of enables because of its open model and its open community and all these different sub communities. So that's just sort of a little bit of a perspective from sort of the commercial map world that I work in from 9 to 5.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Martijn. Yeah, since OSM is a crowdsourced project, everyone is welcome to map, as well as we just have to acknowledge and accept the fact that we all have different perspectives. But the important thing, I think, the worth noting is that all of these different perspectives, we all have that, but not one of that perspective is more important than the other, at least for me. Or that's what I believe, that everyone are as important as they are in contributing the map. So we will be creating a poll for data for everyone. So this is actually a question on what aspects of data quality are most important to you, if you're a data user or a data creator. So we've discussed this, like the options would be like, is it more of the consistency, more of the completeness, or more of the accuracy? So our tech people will launch that poll, and everyone will be able to answer. So also, just to touch on that, I think we're lagging behind of time. One of the most also important question on this is it possible or to measure data quality, and will we ever produce a high quality or perfect maps? And what makes mapping data high quality? This is something Ralph brought about while brainstorming on this event. So that's also, I think, related to that is the question, is that the definition of high quality map data differ according to user, differ according if they are a creator, and if so, how? So how can we create, how can we balance if there are also tension building on our definition, what is high quality or what is a perfect map? Since Martijn, you're on the highlight, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I think one of the things that the OpenStreetMap Foundation tells us is like we don't tell people what to map or how to map, that tells you everything about what the perfect map is, right? The OpenStreetMap Foundation is not going to tell us. We have to figure it out ourselves. So everyone who's using parts of the map, aspect of the map, be it a little bit a small region or a layer that interests them, like railways or certain localized names, they have to figure out what a perfect map is for them. And I'm not going to tell them, but they can ask me to help make it. It's like, that's where we have all these tools for. If you need help, you can ask for it, and then we can help make the map a little bit more perfect for the people who are in need of that. And I think like there's a lot of people who connect with that and use things like Tasking Manager or Map Roulette or other tools to help the map make the map a little bit more perfect for people with a certain lens on it.
Yeah, thank you, Martijn. I think also a related question on that, focusing on the data users like Laura and Jorge. What is the impact of poor data quality on your work or on your end? Jorge, would you go first?
Okay. Poor data quality means, in my perspective, from the company's point of view, which we are focusing on roads, is not getting there in time or quickly or adequately. Sometimes it'll send you on a one-way street and you encounter yourself going against the one-way and making all kinds of illegal turns, and that would be one point of view, the getting there. But also we have found consistency issues have been a problem. A name may be spelt wrong, and it depends on how the other person enters the name that you're going to find it or not. So it may be there, but you may not find it because it's spelt differently. And so consistency is something we are very weary of, always double checking that an entire length of street has the same name all along it, and all the proper characteristics that make this road what it is in reality.
Thank you, Jorge. How about you, Laura, in your work in field mapping? What's your definition of high quality, and what is the impact of poor data quality in your work?
So it's interesting. I mean, the definition of high quality is an interesting question because the consistency that we get is so inconsistent. So I've been known to say, not necessarily of maps, but certainly of other data work that we do, that to be consistently wrong is better to be inconsistently accurate. And we often work on the good enough principle because, I mean, emergencies, you don't have the time to get it perfect. And that's not the point. But when it comes to mapping in particular, I mean, a poor quality data set means that we don't understand who is impacted and who we're helping. So at the end of the day, a poor quality data set means that we can't plan programs and we don't understand, or we can't use data to plan programs. The thing to also understand about the usage of maps and data is that it should make us faster, more agile, and more accurate in who we target. It doesn't mean we don't have the ability to go back into the community, but it does make us slower. And that is, of course, a negative humanitarian impact. So I feel like I had another point, so apologies because I've lost the thread a tiny bit. But I think, yeah, ultimately that's the thing to emphasize, is that if we can be consistent, first off, consistency, once you find consistent problems, yes, it's a problem to fix, but it's more predictable to fix. And so consistent and comprehensive data sets is the other thing I was going to mention. In Canada, we are often faced with, well, not to overuse the word, but inconsistent national coverage in terms of very basic data sets. So some provinces have great OSM coverage, some don't. Some cities have great OSM coverage and others don't. And so we often find ourselves having to blend data sets and trying to do so while keeping the local perspective, while trying to make sure that your geographic hierarchies all still make sense and that the way that buildings are tagged and created all still makes sense is a tall order. And so the other impact of poor quality data is honestly, it's time and it's effort in times where it shouldn't, when we don't have that time to spare. And so that I think it's those two big things. It slows down programs and it makes us, it changes the investment in the map and in the data quality, which can mean it's not used and does mean it's not used.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, on time. Yeah, especially if there's an urgent emergency response that needed to be done, then yeah, I think going back also to Ralph's point earlier, like some of this urgent mapping should have mappers like in intermediate or advanced level to be able to compensate on the time. And Ralph, do you have, since this is actually your question, but yeah, do you want to share your opinions on that?
Yes. Once again, I find that the wording high quality is very misleading. We are not here producing pretty maps. We're not here producing highly technical maps. We're producing very basic maps to meet a very specific function. So if it's an earthquake, then we have buildings collapsed and things like that. So pre-map is just as important as the post-disaster mapping to be able to assess and find people and do things. The size and shape of buildings only becomes important if the size of the shape of the building is important. If they're using an algorithm to try and assess the population in a village, they have an algorithm that says so many people per such size hut would help them to do that. So we must get the huts and the sizes right. If we are just showing where these communities are, then the size of the building is not that important. It's more the area and the size of the area that gives them an idea of the size of the community. So it depends on what we are mapping for. So I'm a bit dubious about using the term high quality. Let me just show an example of what I mean by that. One of the most famous maps in the world is also one of the most imperfect maps in the world. The geographic location of the places is hopelessly out of sync with their positions. The distances between them is hopelessly wrong. So we're looking at the London Underground map. It is absolutely perfect for what it is being done, but geographically, it's an absolute nightmare. So accuracy is in what is being used for. And this is why I say read the instructions to find out what the people in the field need to do their job efficiently and effectively. And if we deliver that, we have delivered a good quality map. My definition of quality is when all the buildings, the roads, the railway lines, and the waterways are all in alignment with each other. And if we achieve that, we've got a good map. Just remember, the person in the field who travels down and looks on the map and sees a dead straight road, but the road they're traveling down kinks to the left and the right, they're going to follow the kinks of the road. They aren't going to go dead straight because our map said so. What is important is when they come to an intersection, do they go left or do they go right, or do they go straight to get to where they need to go? That is important information. To understand how routing tools work out your routes will also give you intelligence in when you're drawing roads, so that you don't dogleg them all over the place, but you make one road a continuous road, so that the routing tool will see that and give it weight and follow the direction of that road. So it's important to understand how the routing tools work. But we need to focus on what the teams in the field need. And this idea of high quality mapping is not always absolutely necessary. So we need to focus our mind on what is needed by the people in the field. The quality mapping will come afterwards. Once they've got the basic map, they can get around, do their job and everything like that. The local people can fix it up and do any additional work that they want to do to that to make it the perfect map. Perfect for them. It doesn't have to be high quality, but it has to be perfect for them to be able to use it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I see the point, like in what purpose you are mapping, and also who you are mapping to is, those two are like more of a central question on how we can get good enough or perfect map to serve its own purpose. So yeah, I'm sorry we have extended time, but yeah, one last question maybe as a closing, one last statement from the participants as closing. So yeah, from these discussions and from all of the comments and opinions that have arise in this discussion. So yeah, what do you think, how we can best create or validate data for both humanitarian and corporate purposes, and how can it be standardized or integrated for the goal of producing quality data? Maybe just a brief 1 to 2 liners, since we have extended time, and yeah, I'm giving it to Ralph since he's already in the highlight.
Okay, I think this is one where we can't really do that as remote mappers, and we rely on the people on the ground. So our communications and our encouraging local mappers and keeping them onboarding them and getting them mapping their own local areas is the only way that we're going to get the ground validation that we need. Just remember, we're working from satellite imagery. When it reaches us, it's probably already about 6 months old. We may be working from anything from 2 years to 6 years old. The satellite imagery has an accuracy of between 5 and 10 meters in some places. It can be out by 30 meters in others. Your GPS equipment is probably accurate to about 5 meters. So anything we do remotely is not going to be 100% perfect. It's the people on the ground that will verify the facts that that road does exist and that road does connect to villages. It is the people on the ground that will say that is not a house, that is a shop. That's the people on the ground that will say that this road or this building no longer exists, or this village has been completely destroyed or washed away in the floods. So we are mapping to give them the basic mapping for them to improve and to ground verify the facts. That would be the final validation that will prove our mapping and prove its worth.
Wow. Yeah. Anyone would like to add on that? I think that's a very great closing. But yeah, Jorge or Martijn or Laura, just a closing statement from you now. Martijn.
I think just finally, the local chapters and communities working group of the OpenStreetMap Foundation is doing fantastic work to kind of connect people and make sure that they have the tools that they need and make sure that the tools are known. And I would encourage you to kind of see how you can support them, because they're really kind of trying to make sure that local communities have what they need in the OpenStreetMap ecosystem, that the tools are known, and I think they would be very excited to receive all your help and your input, and I know some of you already are, so that's great. But yeah, that's it. Thank you all very much for participating. Really
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
Martijn. Laura, Jorge, just a closing or yeah. No.
Well,
Right.
I think a map is a live thing. It's pretty much alive, so it's never going to be finished. And quality is also never going to be finished because there's always another point of view. So I think what OSM is doing is very remarkable, and the uses it's been giving has been giving is also very encouraging. So I encourage everybody to keep on.
True. Yeah, the map will never be complete. And Laura, your last closing.
Yeah, so I think to echo Ralph, our role as remote mappers and or even if you're with a company or a program, it's to add to the base map. It's to create the base for the locals to fill in. And so the way to create data quality for us in our programming is to set up an OSM community, is to lead community members towards OSM so that it is self-sufficient. It's not about us filling in the blanks at all. It's about us creating the space for others to tell their stories.
Yeah, so true, so true. Yeah, I really think like open data should be created for the community as well as with and by the local communities on the ground. Thank you very much to our panelists, and sorry we have extended some time. We will move on to the breakout room, so yeah, we can have extended discussion with the panelists and also the participants as well. But before that, may I ask everyone to turn on their their camera. We will take a group photo. If you are comfortable turning on your camera so we can take a group photo, that will be awesome. So yeah, just waiting for people to turn on their camera. I have a 3-pager here, so it will take me some time. So I will have three takes because I have 3 pages. So I'm taking, so yeah, just smile or do your pose, whatever you want. So this is the first one. 1, 2, 3. And then the other one, hold on, so sorry for that. 1, 2, 3. And then the last one. I just don't want anyone left behind. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone for turning on your camera and yeah, participating in the discussion. We are now heading to breakout room. You will see a pop-up on your room or on your screen to join a breakout room. So our breakout room 1 would consist of our panelists, data creators, Ralph and Martijn. So if you want to have more in-depth conversation with them and other like-minded or interested participants, please go to room 1, and then room 2 will be for data users, Jorge and Laura. If you are more keen or interested in participating or discussing about how data users use data on the map, please join the breakout room, and we will see you in about 15 minutes back. But it's we also consider that if you cannot make it, it's also fine. We've extended time. So yeah, see you on the breakout rooms.
That was a nice point of yours, Greg, with regard to seeing people and putting faces to people. It really is very helpful, and it was also community building. And that's something that we are all in agreement with, that we need to build the local communities. One of the things HOT is doing is, in actual fact, regional hubs. We're putting together regional hubs, one for South America, one for South Asia. We're doing one for Africa as well, which Jeffrey is involved in. So we are actually going down to the local communities by opening up hubs in their area so that we can coordinate the more localized mapping. And that's one of the things that Hot Missing Maps is involved in. Arnali, you're still muted.
Yes, sorry. Thank you for letting me know, Ralph. Yeah, thank you everyone who joined the breakout sessions, who joined the panel discussion. I'm very sorry that it was quite a short discussion. Maybe on the next future webinars we can improve that. So yeah, please help us improve the webinars. Please answer the feedback form. It's on your screen. It's also in the chat. Very happy that for everyone who participated in this session. Thank you for making this successful. And also, yeah, we're very happy to open this space for discussions, for pressing discussions like this. And if you have any ideas for the future webinars, please key it in the feedback form. So yeah, we know which topic is very important for the open mapping, humanitarian mapping, and also OpenStreetMap ecosystem. Yes, so thank you again, everyone. Our panelists and participants. Is very great to have this kind of discussion with you, and we'll see you on our next webinars. Also, State of the Map will be in July 9 to 11. So yeah, check it out. Thank you, everyone, and